what about, AI with respect to lawyers? And I said, well, there's going to have the same number of lawyers, just those that don't know AI aren't going to have any work. You have to know AI, you have to understand it, and you have to utilize it properly for your client. I think in 5 years, if you get sued for malpractice and you did not use AI, that's going to be a fact against you in the malpractice.
Hey there, I'm Travis Patterson, and welcome to Driving Change. Here, you're going to find unfiltered insights and hard-hitting questions that challenge the status quo in law and in life. As a personal injury lawyer in Fort Worth, Texas, I see firsthand how challenges like distracted driving and other just general family safety issues really impact our community every single day. But I refuse to accept these problems as inevitable. In this podcast, we're going to dig deep into real-world problems, bringing you practical solutions from my experiences in practicing law, raising a family, and running my own business. I'm not here to preach to anybody. I'm here to simply ask questions and start conversations that make you think differently and provide you actionable advice that you can use right away in your own life. So welcome to Driving Change. Let's get to it. All right, welcome to another episode of the Driving Change podcast. I am Travis Patterson, joined today by my buddy Jim Zadeh. Jim, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Travis.
So Jim is an awesome guy. He is a fellow lawyer, retired lawyer. Semi-retired lawyer. I don't think he'll ever fully retire. But just kind of a jack of all trades, kind of a Renaissance man here in town. A lot of cool subspecialties that we can get into, but invited him on today to talk about artificial intelligence as it relates to the legal world, AI, and how lawyers are using it, how folks in the business world should think about how their lawyers are using it, and things like that. Jim gave a presentation on this a couple weeks ago to the Tarrant County trial lawyers, and it was just fascinating. So I knew you'd be a good guest. So thanks for hopping on.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So I think most people now know artificial intelligence is here. We've got ChatGPT. We've got other stuff. I tend to use it for what I call party tricks. I go on there and I create coloring books for my children, or I just come up with a shopping list, or use it just to kind of make my life easier for little fun stuff. But what you presented on is how we as lawyers should be using AI in our legal practice. And we, of course, do some of that. Probably could be doing a little bit more. But let's start there, Jim. And you still have a law firm here in town. I know you don't run the day-to-day anymore, but how are y'all using AI in your practice, and what's working?
Yeah, artificial intelligence in the law is, just to start out with, I think lawyers right now are way behind the curve.
Yeah.
I gave a presentation day before yesterday to the clinic heads at Texas A&M School of Law, and I asked how many of them, knew Perplexity, which is, I call the gateway drug of artificial intelligence, and none of them raised their hand. As you know, at the Tarrant County Trial Lawyers Association, there were a lot of deer in headlights there.
Yeah, for sure.
So lawyers right now just are behind the curve in using it. So I have to gauge my talks. I've given talks. I actually gave one down in Brazil recently, but I give talks all the time. I just have to gauge my talks when I talk to lawyers on a much lower level as to what they're doing. What we use it for in our office is we have case management software, which is FileVine. There is some artificial intelligence built in for that. And then you have your large language models, which is your ChatGPT and your Claude. We found for lawyers that Claude is a better product. And so we use Claude. So I have 10 employees total, including interns. I require all of them to use Claude. And the way I tell them to use it is if you have anything where you're going to be sitting at your desk for more than an hour, like interrogatory responses, summary judgment response, your first draft needs to be on Claude.
Wow.
And as you know from doing it, your first draft sometimes can take 2, 3, 4 hours. But on Claude, if you input the right information, it's less than a minute.
Yeah.
So everybody in my office is required. We trained on it. They learned it. So we use Claude and Perplexity for just basic searches. So Perplexity is Google for artificial intelligence.
Okay.
So you go into Perplexity, you do your search. In artificial intelligence, they don't call them searches, they call them prompts. And so there's an art and a science to how you do the prompt. You need to put more information rather than less information. So we train on prompts. We train on Claude. We train on FileVine and using it for that. And then there's some bells and whistles, neat products that we're looking into right now that aren't quite there yet. One of them is called Deposely LX. I think I talked about that before, where you do a deposition and you hook into the court reporter's machine and you get real-time transcript, and then it has your whole file on your laptop, and it is suggesting questions to you like a second chair.
Wow.
So those are some of the things that we use it for right now.
I mean, at what point is it just going to start asking the questions?
I mean, we're close, right? I was
Right.
doing a lot of research yesterday on AI agents, and these agents now can only do things for 30 minutes, but there are going to be a point where they can do it for 8 hours. You can have an AI agent next to you, and it could literally take the deposition for you. You can write the script for it. You don't have to code because now artificial intelligence does the coding. You can do the whole thing to write it for you, and the agent could take your deposition.
Wow. Okay, so the AI can give us a first draft, and obviously we don't suggest that be your final draft. We know lawyers who have been putting the grease on that.
Mm-hmm.
But first drafts might be a good use to use AI. Check your case citations.
Right.
Helping respond to discovery, helping respond to motions, draft petitions, and help prepare you for depositions. AI can't try your case for you.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Right.
All right, so let's fast forward this thing, right?
Uh-huh.
The next question is, where's the future going here? Is AI going to replace lawyers? Is AI going to replace the court system? Are we going to have AI courts someday? I mean, what do you read more about this than anybody I know. So what are you thinking?
I don't think it's going to replace the court system, but right now, for example, on very small claims that go to arbitration on less than $5,000, there's a system set up right now where AI will make the initial decision, and then you can appeal that decision to a real-life judge.
Oh, well.
So, and a lot of them aren't being appealed because AI is being fair on its results.
Right.
And so you could extrapolate it to judges and all that, but AI, as of this point, cannot analyze a witness and determine whether a witness is telling the truth or not.
Yeah, credibility is a huge part of what we do.
Yeah, and so we're not there yet, and I don't think we'll be at the point where AI is going to replace lawyers in the courtroom. What I think AI is doing is going to complement lawyers. And I got asked in Rio, what about AI with respect to lawyers? And I said, well, there's going to have the same number of lawyers, just those that don't know AI aren't going to have any work.
Right.
You have to know AI, you have to understand it, and you have to utilize it properly for your client. I think in 5 years, if you get sued for malpractice and you did not use AI, that's going to be a fact against you in the malpractice.
Yeah, see, that's so interesting because right now, and what are the judges? I know the judges are all across the board on everything, but what's the general consensus on the judiciary right now? Are they nervous about AI? Do they not want their litigants using it, or are they open to it?
So in February, the Sedona Conference, Judicial Conference, which is the premier judicial conference that all the judges listen to, and they put out a paper in February on artificial intelligence. And what they said was they want the judges to use artificial intelligence, and they gave a list of 14 things that judges should use artificial intelligence for. And there's everything. The only thing that wasn't on that list was actually drafting the opinions. But even then, researching it, they could use it.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard of, I don't do criminal law, but I've heard of judges using it to help propose sentencing.
Yeah.
I mean, the actual amount of time somebody spends in jail is proposed by artificial intelligence.
Right. But the judges now have a white paper from the leading group saying they should use artificial intelligence. And in fact, in all federal courts, Westlaw, or now it's Thomson Reuters, has Co-Counsel 2.0, and that is free for all the federal judges. So they have free artificial intelligence at the highest level that they're using every single day to do their work.
Yeah.
So, yeah, artificial intelligence, they expect you to use it.
Yeah. So what's your advice to lawyers? Like you mentioned, lawyers are slow to adapt. I mean, I think we saw this, not too long ago with the shift to the cloud. For a lot of our case management software and stuff like that. A lot of lawyers were pretty slow on that. I know you and I and others were kind of out in front on this. But what is your advice to lawyers? Because the problem, what I see is it's happening so fast. There's a new toy out there. I have a new email in my inbox at least once a week pitching me, trying to sell me some new AI thing to help analyze medical records or to help do this or that. And you just can't keep up with all of it. Unless you're Jim Zadeh. So what's your advice to lawyers who by nature are slow to change, but even the ones who want to lean into it, it's like, where do you start?
Yeah, so I try and read every article that comes out. I'm on several newsletters, and I get Texas Lawyer, and everything that's out there about AI, try and read or watch the podcast about. I would tell people, don't pay attention to that, right? Let me handle that for you. What I
Yeah.
would tell the lawyers to do is, number one, start with perplexity, as I call it, the gateway drug of
Right.
artificial intelligence. Just go ahead and do a prompt on perplexity for anything. Like you said, a coloring book or just anything that's out there, and try it, because virtually, most of the lawyers haven't even done that. They haven't even tried one prompt on artificial intelligence. And once you do it, I've seen the lights come on for everybody when first time they do it, they said, "Oh my God, it can do that?"
Yeah.
And yes, it can. All right, you've done perplexity. Now let's graduate to ChatGPT and Claude, the large language models. And now let's do a task there. And now let's do a task relating to the law. Let's say you've got a thorny problem and you're just mulling it around in your head and you're not quite sure direction to go in. Try ChatGPT. Throw it in there and see what the result is.
I know you have thousands of anecdotes here, but like one staring at me here in my lap, and it's my outline for this podcast. And I'm not, I don't sit here and read these questions, as you can kind of tell by what we're doing here, but I like to come prepared with kind of a general outline. And what I did for this one and what I do for a lot of podcasts, like here's who I'm interviewing, here's the podcast website, these are my past episodes. So what would be some good suggested questions for this guest based on, my style, what I've done in the past, based on what this person's an expert at, based on the amount of time we have, based on the vibe of the podcast deal. And here, and here's an outline. And then I can go in and tweak it. And it can come up with that in 5 seconds.
I mean, it's for anything you need it for. I got blood tests recently. I had 10 years worth of blood tests. I threw it into ChatGPT and I said, tell me the trends here and tell me, what I'm seeing and what I need to be doing. And then here's my diet, change my diet to, go with my blood test.
Yeah.
Here's my workout routine. And then I take all of that and I go to my doctor and my doctor says, okay, here's the one tweak that you're missing, but you got 80-90% of it right here.
Right.
That's what it can be used for. It can be used for anything in your life.
Yeah. It could. I had a bulging disc about a month ago. I told you the story. It read my MRI image. Mm-hmm. It can just read an actual image of an MRI. It told me where the bulge was, how big the bulge was, and what I could do to alleviate the pain. And it wasn't too far off of what what PT was saying, what pain management was saying. It was pretty dialed in. Recommended exercises to help, deal with that. So obviously not replacing the advice of a medical professional, but it can kind of help you get started in the right direction. And there's 1,000 different stories we can go with. So going back to legal, right? What I love about AI, and what you do too, I know, is it can allow us to be even more efficient and more accurate in our practice, have some quality control, and like you said, get a lot of menial tasks done a lot quicker. That's, to me, where the gold is right now. We're personal injury lawyers. The way any personal injury lawyer in the country works, as far as I know, you get a percentage of whatever that case is worth. And there's different fees for different times of the case where it gets settled. A lot of lawyers out there bill by the hour. Okay, so let's talk about the elephant in the room, Jim. Because I billed by the hour for the first, 2 years of my legal career. It wasn't for me. But I know a lot of people who do it. It's the big law, traditional law firm model, and a lot of lawyers do it. There's nothing wrong with it. But when you talk about AI, and now you have a tool that can make a lot of legal tasks, research, doc review, drafting, a lot of those legal tasks, you can be a lot more efficient at it. If something used to take a lawyer 2 hours to do, but now it takes 5 minutes to do, what is that conversation like between those lawyers and their clients on modern billing rates?
I personally think that they need to charge 5 minutes.
Right.
But they don't.
And when you say
so I was a defense attorney for 15 years. I billed for 15 years. I understand what billing is about. I understand that it's a model of inefficiency. Yeah. The longer you can take on a project, the more your law firm is happy with you, right? And so I've had conversations with lawyers. I talked to a partner recently about what happens when you do medical summaries of medical records, and you can do them on ChatGPT, and it takes you literally 30 seconds. What are you going to bill? And I got this whole, 2-minute answer that in essence said, we're still going to bill an hour, and that's just what they're going to do because that's how they make their money. I talked to a lawyer this weekend who charges $1,800 an hour. He does mergers and acquisitions. He's a law school friend of mine. And I asked him about, M&A is transactional. It is designed. It is perfect for artificial intelligence. You could save 90% of the fees on it.
Wow.
And I asked him, how are you doing with artificial intelligence? I mean, big partner at a big firm. I don't even know it. I don't understand it. My associates will come to me and they'll tell me, oh, Harvey told me that I was right, but that we needed to add something. And he said, who's Harvey? And if you're in the legal world, Harvey is the state of the art for big law firm for artificial intelligence. So it wasn't an associate, it's a product named Harvey. And so he has to learn from his associates what artificial intelligence is telling him. So I teach at Texas A&M, I teach at the law school, and I teach all my students on artificial intelligence. I actually have a class on it. And I teach advanced torts, and I require them to use artificial intelligence.
Right.
And I tell them to use it on their final, and I tell them to just tell me when you use it on your final, because I think the young attorneys, especially those coming out of law school, have to know it so they can help the $1,800 an hour partner. Right.
Oh, absolutely. Become more valuable for your law firm. Maybe not more. I guess valuable is not the right word. The valuable associate is the one who bills the most.
Right.
But the clients are going to shift. I mean, it's just a matter of time before the clients start demanding proof of AI use, right, in their files and their client matters. And if those partners have no idea how to use it, I imagine they could lose business.
And wait till AI starts reviewing their bills.
Oh, wow.
That's where you're going to see it. AI is going to say, I could have done this in 5 minutes. Why are you billing my client 2 hours?
Oh, wow. I think a lot of lawyers just slam their phones on the ground.
Sorry.
Sorry for telling the truth.
Sorry, yeah.
Okay, let's talk about legal education. So, Jim, you're the one who got me into adjunct teaching at the Texas A&M School of Law. Tennessee and I are going on our 6th year doing personal injury 101.
People love your class, by the way.
Well, likewise, it's been fun. But we have a similar model of we are going to make this the most practical class that you have in law school. Maybe it's probably right behind Jim's, in your law practice management class. So I fully agree that, we should teach AI to the law students. One of the reasons I love our local law school is they're open to that practical education, especially by the adjuncts. But where I went to law school at the University of Texas, it wasn't a lot of practical stuff. I didn't take a lot of adjunct classes, but it was a lot more like theory. So are law schools shifting their education to teaching this as far as you're seeing?
I think they're just like lawyers. They're slow to change.
Right.
I mean, we're still doing, a semester and then a final at the end of the semester in 3 hours. That is not realistic.
No.
If you get a legal problem when you're at work, you just work all night. You can use artificial intelligence. You can have the answer. And you can get it done. So the way we test now in law schools, I'm not a big fan of. And so I think, but that's the way, these professors have done it for 30 years. And so they're not going to change.
Right.
And so it's just up to people like you and I to go in and just drag them through it. So that's why I met with the clinic people to get the clinic on board and have them use artificial intelligence when a student goes out and represents a client, a tax client in the tax clinic. They use artificial intelligence. If you go into criminal court, use artificial intelligence. Have them use it in real life applications. I don't think I'm going to get first year teachers, 1L teachers to change what they do, but I think we can change it second and third year and really teach them.
Yeah, because at first year law school, pretty much anywhere you go, it's the same 7 or 8 classes, and it's kind of how to think about these things. It's not really how to do anything; it's just kind of how to think about these legal problems, whether it's a tort or whatever contract. So what about the ethics of all of this, right? So that's kind of the thing that kind of always concerns lawyers when a new tool comes out is the ethical concerns about client confidentiality. Obviously is a big issue. So what are you seeing?
So if you have a closed system like Harvey or something that's internal like FileVine that keeps all your stuff internal, you don't really have to worry about the attorney-client stuff. When you go out into ChatGPT and Claude, you need to take out all the client identifiers. Now, if it's a publicly filed document like a petition or discovery, you can throw that in Chat and you can throw that in Claude. But you do need to keep attorney-client, that way. I will tell you, in all the research that I've done, I have never seen that a lawyer who's done a search that's included attorney-client information, that's come back to haunt them.
Right.
I just don't see that. Now, what I am seeing ethically that lawyers are doing, and in fact, there was an example this morning, is they're doing their first draft on ChatGPT. They're copying, cutting, and pasting it, putting it in a brief, and filing it without doing their work. One of the problems with artificial intelligence is it makes things up. It's getting better at it. They're called hallucinations.
Right.
It's getting better at it, but it makes up citations. It makes up statements of law. And there was an article that just came out before I came over here today about a lawyer at a big law firm who went ahead and submitted a brief that was not checked. And it had 9 cites in it that were incorrect, and it had 2 statements of law that were incorrect. And the judge asked them to come back and show cause, and they repeated the same thing again, and they got sanctioned $31,000.
Yeah.
Normally, it happens, now it's happening weekly. It used to happen monthly, but this is happening. What happens is lawyers get sanctioned anywhere from 0 to now 31's the highest that I've heard, 31,000. And occasionally they get barred from practicing in that court for a certain amount of time, but that's it. And the judges go ahead and do rule on the case on its merits. So the worst thing for lawyers is their names in the paper. Right. And in the one this morning, and I don't like big law because they do this, they had to find a scapegoat. So they traced it all the way back to a memo that another partner had done in a different office that was used to do the brief. And that's the only name that was in the article, was the guy who did the original search. Not the lawyers whose signature was on the brief.
Oh,
They're
wow.
the ones who should have site checked it. But it was just, they made this poor partner a scapegoat.
Right.
But you do have to check it. Obviously, there's also bias.
Yeah.
And so the example I always use is if you go ahead and ask ChatGPT or Claude to give you a picture of an American CEO, 100% of the time, it's a white male.
Mm.
If you ask it to do a picture of the boardroom and the board of directors of a Fortune 500 company, 100% of the time, it is white male and white female.
Mm.
It has just it's scraped the entire internet, and so it's got 100 years of bias built right into it.
Gotcha.
It's not saying that it's intentionally that way, but it's 100% that way. 100% that it comes up biased because of the history of bias we have in those areas. So you got bias, you've got hallucinations. There's always the problem that we have of we don't really know how these things work.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like the human brain, we don't really understand how AI works. We just know we put it in and something comes out, and that's
Right.
always a little bit scary
Right.
that we don't know how it works. And confidentiality we talked about. Those are the main issues that the main limitations of artificial intelligence. But, and I want to emphasize this, it is not enough for lawyers to not go and do it.
Right.
It is an excuse that lawyers have used. They see these articles of the citations that were done or the lawyers that are getting sanctioned. They go, oh, I don't want to do it. You see what happens if you use artificial intelligence?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And for me, that is just putting your head in the sand because you've done it that same way for as long as you've done it, and you're just going to keep going that way.
Interesting. Okay, so what is Harvey exactly? Is that where this is the way I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, you have a law firm, like, if you've been doing it for a period of time, you have a database of motions and briefs that you've written on similar topics, and there might be different fact patterns, different client names and stuff, similar legal issues. So do all those documents go into a machine, and then it's just predicting what, like, the best lawyer at this particular law firm would use, or is it also incorporating like the outside world?
It is incorporating it's incorporating the outside world, but I haven't confirmed this, but virtually every company does. They have a certificate that no human eyes will look at any searches. So you can get that certificate from ChatGPT or Claude that, hey, I'm a company, I'm keeping everything in-house. I'm going to do some searches using ChatGPT or Claude as my base, but no human eye is going to look at the search. Because if you do a search and let's say it's child pornography or I want to build an atomic bomb, then that's flagged and a human eye looks at the search and may stop you from being able to do that prompt or that search.
Okay.
But this says no human eye is going to look at it because we know you're doing it for business purpose. So you get that certificate, you tie in all the stuff you have in the office, but then you also tie in all of Westlaw or Lexis into it. So now you have all the case law in there too. And so what Harvey can do, give you an example, is if a federal judge is given 3,000 opinions, it can predict what the answer is going to be, and it can actually write the brief like it's writing the opinion for that federal judge.
Mm-hmm.
So Harvey is artificial intelligence on steroids for a law firm.
Wow. So Claude and ChatGPT are very cheap. That stuff's like $20 a month.
Mm-hmm.
How expensive is
I have not
level?
priced Harvey because it is big firm.
That's big firm stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what they're doing.
And it was really a mystery. About 6 months ago, they started coming out with some marketing, and the first marketing was nothing but like a Beethoven music and a video, and that was it. They're being all mysterious about what they do.
Uh-huh.
So it's hard to get into. Someone asked about it on the listserv yesterday. It's the first time I've seen plaintiffs' lawyers start asking about Harvey, but I have not priced it. I just know that it's out there.
Okay. What about state bars? Are they regulating AI at all right now? Or, I mean, you talk about lawyers being slow to change. I mean, no offense to the state bars, but
The only thing we have is some ethics opinions that say that lawyers have a duty to stay up on technology.
okay,
Right?
great.
And
Thanks a
so
lot.
we have a responsibility to stay up on technology, and I think that responsibility includes artificial intelligence, but I don't think you're going to get a grievance because you haven't stayed up on AI.
No.
So that's the only thing we have. But there are laws, right? With the European Union, if you have any case involving Europe, you need to look at the EU AI Act. That is the act that applies to all of Europe. And then some of the federal government we have here is horrible. If you've seen any of the Senate hearings, a bunch of 80-year-old people trying to understand AI was just the most painful thing that you've ever seen, right? And so we have no federal laws at all about artificial intelligence. They're working on some deep fake stuff, and they're working on some transparency stuff. But some states have laws. So like, for example, in Tennessee, they want to protect their singers, and so they're not allowing you to use a singer's voice to create an artificial intelligence song.
Sure.
Colorado has an act which is going into effect February 1st of next year, and that act talks about transparency. So if you are doing a job search and you're including Colorado residents, you have to disclose to those Colorado residents that you're using AI to as an algorithm to go ahead and weed out people that you may or may not choose for your search. So that's the kind of stuff that's out there. Mostly it's focusing, though, on the deep fakes and child pornography and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and that's the part, obviously as a parent, that scares the hell out of me is, there's a lot of cool stuff with AI and what we can do with business and our legal stuff, but what scares me is what they can do with images of children and all sorts of bad things. And to me, it's like, how are they going to get on top of that? How are they going to shut that stuff down?
Yeah, and right now it's the Wild West, and so in addition to ChatGPT and Claude, there are other large language models out there, and Elon Musk through Twitter, which now X, has a product called Grok, G-R-O-K, and he's kind of taken the guardrails off that, and so that's kind of where people are doing some of the bad things is over and using Grok. There's another product called DeepSeek, which is from China, and believe it or not, they did it cheaper and they did it quicker. With less expensive, but that one is also out there that's being used, I don't know, not really ethically sometimes.
Right.
So that you have, and the one that's no one really talks about right now, Facebook, Meta, they have a product called Llama. The thing about that, it's open source. And so by that, anybody can go in and get the code that they use to build their large language model, and they can use it to buy their own. And so there's a big debate right now as to whether or not OpenAI, which runs ChatGPT, whether they're going to be able to make a bunch of money on it or whether or not consumers are going to just take it and make their own. And so there's an arms race going on right now as to who's going to be in the lead, but then there's also this little side race, like maybe just the consumers are the one that are going to get the AI and the big companies are going to lose out. So it's really interesting to see which way this is going right now.
So staying here, like outside of the legal world, like how advanced do you predict AI is going to get? I mean, you mentioned some scary stuff about downloading someone's conscience or something like that.
Yeah.
You even lost me at that point. I was
All
like,
right.
what is this guy talking about? So give it another shot. Try to explain this to me like I'm a 5-year-old.
Okay, there are people out there called futurists, right?
Okay.
They're not people who are crazy. They're not fortune tellers. They make their living by telling companies what the future is going to do,
Okay.
right? And they present each year at South by Southwest. One of them's name's Amy Webb. The other guy's name is Ray. I don't know Ray's, that's a long last name. But the combined opinion of both of those, and Ray got everything right so far, is that we're going to reach what's called artificial superintelligence, which means that a computer can do every human task better than 50% of the human population. We're going to get there by 2045. Every human task, it can do better. 2045.
Okay. Wow.
Better than half the population.
Wow.
Anything you can do, it can do better.
Right.
Okay? But one of the things that they're talking about is, okay, we've already reached what's called, some say artificial general intelligence, which is a pretty heightened state. But what we're doing right now in the futurists and what Ray's talking about, and he wants to live to see this, is that there's a product called Neuralink, and Elon Musk is behind that. And this is for paralyzed people when they can go ahead and they can look at a screen and they can tell the screen what they want it to do and it'll do it. They can't move. They can just tell it what to do mentally. There are also products out there where people can think of an image and the image will come up on a screen.
Wow.
Okay, so our thoughts are right now going directly to a computer. Okay, if you look at our brain is nothing but tissue and electric connections and all that. It's not hard to believe that what we have in our brain could be downloaded into a computer. Just like sticking a USB drive in your temple and taking all your information out and sticking it in another computer.
Annalise, how would you like that?
So the idea is that what these futurists are talking about is that you'll be able to download your consciousness, so what you think and who you are and your essence, into a computer. Okay? And so, I talk about the USB drive, but eventually it's going to be just, you can think about it and it'll go into that computer. Ray believes that we're going to have some level of liftoff, as he calls it, where we can start to download the consciousness as early as 2031, 2032. So we're just talking 6 or 7 years from now.
Wow.
The idea being that if you download your consciousness into the computer and it has it similar to any other file that you have, then we could download it into a robot. We could save it in 20 different places.
See, this is where I start to shiver because it starts clashing with religion.
Absolutely.
And a lot like I don't know, where is this going?
Well, let's talk about it from a religious point of view, though.
Yeah.
Imagine if you could download your consciousness, right? You really could. And what Amy talks about, Amy Webb, is that right now we're limited to chips, computer chips, where we can download things.
Mm-hmm.
But she believes that we're going to be able to download information to organic materials such as trees and grass and rocks and all that stuff.
Okay.
And so that'll give us unlimited. But imagine if you could put it in a satellite out of space, or even space rocks that are floating around up there, okay? So you download your consciousness up there.
Okay.
Right? Now imagine, it's not just you, though. You can download your family's consciousness. You could download your friend's consciousness. And then you're all together, right? You can all come together. And what's that called?
It's some weird twisted form of an afterlife, I suppose.
Heaven.
Everybody lives forever and
you get to be with your loved ones forever.
Okay.
From a spiritual point of view, that has a spiritual context to it that, you think, okay, now you have to really think about it, right? And I don't know how the church is going to feel about it if we reach that technology and whether they're going to allow that to happen. A funny story, when I was learning about all this, I talked to my wife and I said, sweetheart, we're married for 35 years and, there's this possibility we can download each other's consciousness and I can actually see into your consciousness and you can see into mine. And she said, you're not going to see my consciousness.
Yeah.
I am never going to show. And I said, well, imagine it's a house and there's certain rooms you can close off. I can't. She goes, no, you're not even coming to the front door, right? So it's something it's got those possibilities. What I like to think about is when you're at a concert or a sporting event, when you as a collective group get into that sporting event, there's nothing better than that feeling, right? That music gets
energy.
in you, the energy of all the people, the energy of the sporting event and the unique things that happened. I'm just thinking of this consciousness thing as that on a much higher level. And you get that kind of synergy going between the people that you love and just live for in your life. And that, Travis, could be even in our lifetime.
Right. Yeah, 20, You said 2030 something?
2030 is when we start to have liftoff. 2045 is when we reach
2045.
artificial superintelligence, which by then we'll have it down.
Yeah. I mean, and then, okay, so like, yesterday, my daughter's going into kindergarten, and she comes home. She's got a shirt, and on the back of it says class of 2038, I think is what it was, which when she's going to graduate. And, but, I just had this like thought in my head, like, what's the world going to look like in 2038? Like, what are the jobs going to look like for those kids in 2038 getting out of high school or college? I imagine they're not going to look like the jobs that are out there right now. So, like, what's your advice to young people on that front?
Young people is just to get your basics down, right? You have to have your fundamentals. Just like first year law school, you have to have your fundamentals. You can't skip on that. You can't go ahead and just let artificial intelligence do all your work. You've got to get your own brain trained.
Yeah.
So do all the basic work, and nothing replace grit.
Right.
Grit is what I think is what makes people the most successful. And even now with artificial intelligence, it'll make you even more successful because AI is going to tell you, be smart for you.
Right.
So it's got to be discipline and grit. And that's what kids need to learn.
Yeah.
And then they learn that and they come out. They can go in any direction they want, use artificial intelligence to help them, and they can create what they want to create.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the grit, I talk about this a lot with, my wife. It's like you just don't see a lot of young people with as much grit anymore. And so if we can establish that with our kids, they'll likely have tremendous opportunities to stand out. So AI is not going to replace all of that, obviously.
Right. That's to me the human element that it can't replace is the strong people, and the ones that aren't that strong, will struggle a little bit, I think.
Yeah. So going back to the legal world, for a minute, it's funny you said the word wild, wild west. Maybe that should be the new name of this podcast because that phrase has been used a lot lately, which I like. But going from religion back to lawyers, just the attorney-client relationship is something that I kind of think about too. Like, you're a frequent user of AI. Are you having conversations with your clients in those initial consultations that we're going to use AI? What are those conversations like, and what's your advice for lawyers there?
Well, I think you have to establish rapport with your client, and so I don't think AI is something you bring up right away. But I think near the end of your conversation, in your initial conversation with your client, you say, hey, we are going to use artificial intelligence on your file. Just want to let you know. But when you call us, you're going to talk to a human. Right. Because AI agents right now are answering a lot of calls. In fact, when I talk to somebody now, I ask them, are they a bot or are they human?
Oh, really? Even if it's sounds like a human voice, wow.
They've got it so good right now.
And do they have to be honest with you if you ask that question?
They have to. They should be.
Okay.
I mean, if they're ethical. Yeah.
See, I just, we use technology at a law firm, but I think just in society, we're kind of portaled. I call it portal to death. Everything's got a portal. You got a portal for your records. You got a portal for this. You got a portal for your kid's school. You got a portal for the carpool line. You got a portal. Oh my gosh. Apps for all your kids' sports teams. Like, there's a lot of apps and a lot of portals to keep up with. It's almost a full-time job just keeping track of those passwords. And so, like, when we have attorney-client, initial consultations, I tell my people, I don't want any screens in there. You go in there with a piece of paper, a legal pad, your intake sheet, and you develop that relationship. That you can't, because you cannot outsource that to tech. We tried that once with iPads, and it was a disaster. And so, just establishing that human connection is so important. And then, like you said, don't let robots answer your phones. I mean, that's just the worst.
As I know, but there are companies that are doing it, and lawyers are going to build their own AI agents that are going to do that. They're going to answer clients' questions. And frankly, they have access to your entire file. They have access to everything inside. They can answer the questions that the clients have.
Right.
Update them on what's going on in their case, when their next hearing is, all that kind of good stuff. They could do it.
Yeah.
But that's not what a client wants. That's not what your client and my client wants. They want to talk to me.
Yeah.
They want to talk to Mary. They want to talk to Amanda. They want to talk to people they know and trust.
Now that you mention it, this is one of the sales pitches that was in my inbox the other day, and I just deleted it because I don't want anyone's AI robot talking to my clients and pretending like they're us.
No. But as you know, Travis, some of the marketers are going to start imitating us,
How much time do we have?
I know. We could talk about that forever. I'm sorry. I didn't
No,
mean
I
to bring
know.
that up.
That's a whole other episode
Yeah.
is non-lawyer lead generation and all that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
I got into a little bit of that with Tom Karsh a couple months ago on the Bear Tree stuff, but obviously there's a whole other kind of world out there that you and I could dabble with. But No, this AI conversation has been fascinating. I think it gives lawyers a lot to think about. I think if you're not using AI, you got to start with Perplexity, start with Claude at least. Let it fact check you, let it get you a first draft, and just kind of see where it goes from there. Any other advice for lawyers?
No, that's my message. My message has been on all my talks has been try it, please, as a lawyer. You're doing your client a disservice by not trying it. It really can help. And the other thing I would say is it's a great first draft and a great last draft. It can go ahead and look at everything at the end to make sure you miss something. And I'd ask, if it's a motion or a hearing, ask who's going to win.
Wow.
Because it's been predicted about 95% right for our cases so far. But do the hard work in between.
See, if you're going to lose a hearing, you want to know that before the hearing?
I do. I want to know that I'm going to go in. If I go in and it says, oh, you're probably going to lose, I got to figure out, I ask it why.
Uh-huh.
And what can I do differently to make it work? And then I start thinking about the judge I'm going in front of, and what is it that I could say to this specific judge? Because of our experience, Travis, we've been in front of every one of these 11 district judges in Tarrant County, in the 3 county court at law judges, in the 3 federal district court judges, and they're all different.
Yeah, and for sure. But here's a practical, use for that is resuming negotiations. If you're about to get poured out, and this thing's telling you like 90 to 95% chance you're done, and that lawyer on the other side doesn't have this tool, and they're just as nervous as you are because you have a pretty motion and stuff. But if it's going to tell you 95% you're going to get poured out, you're going to get 0, it's a pretty good incentive to go talk to the other side. And then that's going to help clear up the court docket. So, the courts are incentivized to let lawyers use AI, the judges for sure. That's just one of many practical, applications to knowing what your odds are.
And you tell your client, this is what we did, and AI couldn't come up with any other argument. We looked everywhere. We couldn't come up with any other argument. And, sometimes I have good news and sometimes I have bad news. And unfortunately, I have bad news. Our case is probably going to get poured out unless we want to settle. They've offered X.
Yeah.
This is how much you're going to receive from their offer. We recommend you take it. You don't have to. We're your soldier. We'll fight the whole way through.
But go get that in writing to CYA.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
Yeah, I know. But you do talk to them and you tell them that. And we've had that happen a couple times where we thought we were golden. And it's a great check for you because sometimes you buy your own,
if you're in
what
that
your own
case.
selling, and you're thinking, oh, this is the greatest case. Jury's going to love it. Judge going to love it. And you're like, uh-oh, maybe I overestimated the case.
Yeah, we used to just ask each other, what do you think of my case? Let me just kind of present that hypothetical for you. It's this court. These are my facts as my defendant, and you might be one of those phone calls, and you say, "Yeah, your case isn't as good as you think it is." I've had that conversation too many times, but having an AI tool tell me that in 5 seconds would help a lot.
I think on settlement values as well. A lot of us local people talk about, "Hey, I've got this case." In fact, Wade, who was on recently, I called him on a case I had recently, and I gave him the facts, and I said, "Wade, how much do you think this case is worth?" And he gave me a number, and fortunately, my number was significantly higher than that. And he goes, "Man, I don't know why you're talking to me. You need to be taking that right now before you get off the phone."
Yeah.
So that's what we do as plaintiffs lawyers here in town. We help each other with that.
Yeah.
And I think AI can be another tool for us to do that.
For sure.
Value.
Well, I appreciate it, Jim. You've given lawyers and just folks who work with lawyers and just kind of folks in the general community a lot to think about with AI. I could see just regular people who are in their jobs thinking about using this more often for their work. I can't think of especially any professional task, professional job that you can benefit from using this.
Give you one example. I spoke in front of the Fort Worth HR group. There was some representatives from the city of Weatherford. I went over to city of Weatherford. I've given 2 talks to them. First, I talked to their executive group, and then I talked to their department heads. They're using Claude, and now they say to each other, "What does Claude say?" And the whole city of Weatherford is using artificial intelligence right now, and it has made them so much more efficient and so much happier in their jobs. And that's just one small example of how it can make a difference. So I think everybody should at least give it a try.
Absolutely. Weatherford, that's a very conservative town, and they're using it, so we can all use it. All right. Well, thanks a lot, Jim. Appreciate you coming on. And if especially lawyers want to talk to you more in depth about how they might adopt this to their practice, how could they reach you?
Just my email, jim@zadehfirm.com, ZADEHFIRM.com. Just email me. I have a 0 inbox. AI helps with that. And so I will respond to your email right away.
0 inbox. AI can get me a 0 inbox?
Yes, and it's.
Oh, I've been working on that for 10 years. Okay, I'm going to go work on that right now. All right. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Travis. Appreciate it.
If you liked today's episode, please subscribe to the podcast and don't forget to leave us a review. It really does help us get the word out. As we dive into these important conversations about safety and about community, I'm reminded of why I became a personal injury lawyer in the first place. Every single day, I see people whose lives have been turned upside down because of some accident in one form or another. It's a confusing and overwhelming time, and it can feel impossible for folks to know where to turn. If you or someone you love have been in an accident like that and you need honest guidance, give us a call. We'll get to know you, we'll get to know your story, and we will be with you every step of the way. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.